testicular mass. What I'm going to take you through is what will be the practical approach, and especially towards an exam. Okay, in the exam, what answers would, if I'm the examiner, what answers would I expect you to answer?
Yes, sir.
So be very clear. Most of the exams are passed and failed. A lot of that is going to be the predominant dwell of the thing today. Is that okay? Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
so
sir.
I'm just not able to hear you guys well. Yeah. Can't hear you properly. That's the same problem I'm having as well. Okay, let me try a different internet connection. Just stay online. Yeah.
Sure, sure, sir.
Nitesh, I'm going to just change the connection just to see whether I can get a.
Okay, okay, sure, sir.
Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. This is slightly
Yes, sir.
more reliable. Yeah. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Fine. So if internet connection is giving a trouble, then in that case we'll switch off the video. Anyway, what I'm going to do is, when I'm going to present the case, I'm going to switch off the video so that I will switch on the video only when the case goes on. Okay. So we'll start off. Is that all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir.
Awesome. Super. So thank you so much to Nitesh, who has given the case PPT. So all of you can see the screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. So this is the history. 22-year-old unmarried male presented with the right-sided scrotal swelling for 2 months, attempted hydrocelectomy in the periphery with a biopsy of the mass done somewhere else. Okay, that is the story. That is, patient is coming to you in the periphery, yeah, or in the clinic. So we have, so we'll go in a rotational basis. So we'll start off with Praveen. Praveen,
Yes, sir.
what history do you want to take further on from what you are seeing just now? What
Yes, sir.
history do you want?
So since this mass is there for this right scrotal swelling is there for since 2 months, what
Yeah.
was the initial status of the swelling? Was it small to begin with and it has progressed in 2 months, or the size is same? Was any history of trauma associated with it? Or
There is no, okay. So now you're going to tell me, for every question you're going to ask, you're going to tell me a rational explanation why you're asking the question.
yes, sir. Since
So you
he's
said
this,
history, the duration of the swelling, more than 2 months. Yes. Okay. What is the inference from there?
yes, sir. Since it is 2 months swelling, how was the onset of the swelling? Was it insidious? Was it followed by any
Insidious.
event?
No event. Insidious. If there was a following of the event, what does it mean?
Any trauma associated with it, or any hematoma
What
was
trauma
there?
can cause swelling?
Hematoma, sir. Hematoma of the sort.
If there is going to be trauma associated swelling, then
Yes, sir.
do you have other features with it as well?
Yes, sir. Pain.
What all the features?
He will be having
What is the
pain.
association of trauma and yeah?
Yes, sir.
There'll
He will
be
be
some
if it is
color change on the scrotal skin.
and if the hematoma is progressive, there will be a drastic increase in the size of the swelling.
Okay. Now I'm just going to rotate between three of you so that others don't get very bored. Okay, is that all right?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we'll move to Priyank and ask a question. Priyank,
Yes,
now
sir.
what tumors are associated with trauma? Are tumors associated with trauma, and what tumors? And what is the relationship between trauma and tumors?
Trauma, sir. There is a trauma is not a predisposing factor for any testicular tumor, sir.
Okay.
So
all right.
So
trauma itself is not a predisposing factor to a testicular tumor. Yes, perfectly sir. Legitimate. But I'm asking you a different question. What is the association? Okay, trauma is not a causative association to testicular tumor. Yeah, you are right. What else?
If trauma is there, and there may be a previous swelling is there, which is not noticed by the patient, but due to trauma, patient notices a small swelling.
Yes.
Absolutely. So the trauma, the very fact that the testis is slightly increased in the weight and the size makes it slightly more predisposed because it is beyond the natural habitus for it to be traumatized. So trauma, you will elicit far often a history of trauma in patients with testicular masses just because it is slightly awkward in size. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So trauma brings the patient's notice to a testicular tumor.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now, what trauma causes the testicular tumor to get worse? Let's ask Boni. Boni, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Boni.
Any previous inguinal or scrotal surgery?
No. Sarcoma. Okay. So sarcoma. So if you have a patient with sarcoma testis, all right, it may be a small tumor. The moment that is a trauma, usually sarcomas are the only tumor in the, when patients ask a history about, oh, sir, agar chot ho jayega to the tumor will spread everywhere. That's what my Gawala is saying. That concept is applicable, if at all any, to only sarcomas. Okay. Because the moment you put an incision on a sarcoma or a trauma, because sarcoma is a very heterogeneous tumor. So the moment you have a trauma associated with sarcoma, the chances that that sarcoma will proliferate at a greater speed is very high. Very classical example, any retroperitoneal sarcomas, limb sarcomas, the moment you put an IND, then within 2 weeks, the tumor is so big in size. Yeah. So, trauma associated increase in the testicular size. So a painless swelling, patient had a trauma, and then suddenly the size is like a football. Then you have a sarcoma in your hand. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. All right. Now, that brings us to the third point about hydrocoelectomy, right? Hydrocoelectomy. Yes. So you do not know when you listen to the story, you think, oh my God, they have done a biopsy, open biopsy of a testicular tumor. So what type of tumor was there? Whether that is a tumor going to be, proliferating more with the trauma that has happened. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, all right. Now we'll go back to the history one more time. And because we started with Praveen, we'll go to Boni. We go to Boni this time and say, trauma is a history that Praveen has given. What else in the history do you want to elicit?
Whether the swelling was painful or painless, whether any
painful?
lower urinary tract.
Okay.
Hello?
Very good history. I give you full marks for those two histories. What are the swellings associated with lower tract symptoms and pain?
If the patient has lower urinary tract symptoms and features of dysuria and UTI, the patient may have epididyma orchitis. Okay.
Superb. That is definitely a differential diagnosis. Keep in mind that epididyma orchitis can present even with very minimal LUTs as well. Yeah. And also other issues such as instrumentation, patient had a recent cystoscopy, those things also can cause a epididymal orchitis. Yeah. So painful testicular swelling, recent in onset, we have to think of epididymal orchitis. Excellent. So we'll go to next, who is Priyank. Priyank, so trauma, painful swelling. What else in the history do you want to elicit?
I want to ask, sir, about the swelling. If the swelling anytime has decreased in size, or does it enlarge on coughing or anything? Or if patient had any childhood any history of undescended testes or any surgery in childhood?
So you've given two history very nicely. Well done. One is the history of swelling which decreases. Yeah. So
Yes,
what
sir.
is running in your mind when you're asking that history?
Uh, so, and also, sir, first I want to ask if the swelling has originated in the groin and coming into the scrotum, or is it purely scrotal?
Okay. Okay. So excellent. What is that? It is running in your mind. What is the differential
Uh,
diagnosis that you're looking at?
to rule out, sir, any inguinal hernia.
Excellent. So inguinal hernia swellings appearing in the scrotum also have to be thought about. Well done. That's a very good point. And the next thing you told me about is the history of undescended testes in the childhood.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
I want to teach you one thing. Is that what you get as history from the patient is a history. Yes.
Yes, yes,
What you infer is your inference.
yes, sir.
Undescended testis is an inference.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
It is not a history.
Yes.
That's a mistake lots of people do in the exams as well. They'll say, oh, I'll ask patients about LUTs. Patient will not know LUTs unless he is a doctor sitting in front of you. Yeah?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Got it? Understood.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when you are taking history and when you are presenting history, you talk from a patient's point of view.
Yes, sir.
So the history that you'll be eliciting, and you did mention that, for that you get credit, is that you said, I will ask for history of surgery in the childhood in the inguinal area. Perfect. Correct. Yes?
Yes, sir.
So that is the history that you want to elicit. And then if the patient had a history, you will say that patient had a history of surgery in the inguinal area as a child. He also reports an inguinal scar. There is a likelihood that he would have had a history of surgery for undescended testes. So that is an inference from the history that you have taken. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So get into the habit of understanding history and inferences, two separate things. Across the board for all history taking and presentation. If you are going to tell, oh, patient had a prostate cancer or a testicular cancer, many of the examiner will think, oh, you already know the diagnosis, don't you? Somebody has told you that. So the examiner will be very happy to understand that you have come to a conclusion based on certain facts. Yes?
Yes, sir.
So what you
Yes.
need to do is that you tell the examiner, sir, I know the facts. This is the fact. I asked for this fact. It was there and hence I've come to this conclusion. Okay?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, super. So let's, okay, so thanks Priyank. You mentioned about inguinal hernia and you mentioned about undescended testis. Now question to, we started from Praveen, right?
Yes.
So we'll go to
Yes.
Praveen. Praveen, what is the association of undescended testis and testicular mass, testicular tumors?
Yes, sir. If the rate of undescended testes, the percentage of cancer increases on that side and also on the contralateral side. Sir. Cancer
So
risk
every
increases on that.
child has undescended testis will have cancer. Is that what you're telling me?
No, sir. The percentage risk increases, sir. So it's
What percentage it is? What risk
around
is there?
on the
1%,
ipsilateral side,
20%, 100, 88%.
up to 12 to 26% on ipsilateral side, sir, and around 5% on the contralateral side, sir.
Okay. All right. There is another famous way we tell. It is 7 times more the
Relative.
risk of a common
Yes, sir.
man getting testicular tumor.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's about 15 to 20% increase in the risk, overall risk. Okay. Fine. Now, why is that increase in the risk happening and how will you negate the risk?
Yes, sir. The increase in
There
the
are
risk
two
is
questions
happening.
I want to ask you.
Yes. because of the undescended testis, the testis is exposed to increased temperature in the abdomen. One, and there is alteration in the genetic alteration in the spermatogenic cells, spermatogonian cells, and Leydig cells, and also immunologic damage. So, considering all these factors, it has an increased exposure of risk of tumor than the normal individual.
Okay, so let me slightly going to unpick you because looks like Praveen has got caught with me today. If the you told that, so if you think I do, so how early an undescended testis should be operated? How early or how late? Till what age of life can undescended testis be operated?
Sir, only if it is operated within first month of life, if the orchidopexy is done. Sorry, sir. Within a first year of life, then the risk of the otherwise.
Just because we need to dwell a slightly more on undescended testis, I'm going to move to Boni and open question to Priyank as well. What is the age within which undescended testis should be operated and why?
Undescended testis should be operated ideally after 6 months, before 1 year.
Okay.
The main purpose is to improve the spermatogenesis, because after that the spermatogenesis will deteriorate.
How about the testicular cancer risk?
The cancer risk is slightly reduced, but there are 2 to 2.5 times higher risk in patients who are operated for orchidopexy in patients with undescended testis. Only the detection will be.
What is your? Okay, sir, so I got your point. Priyank, are you agreeing with what they said?
Sir, orchiopexy should be done before 1 year of age, because after 1 year, histological changes start appearing in the testes if it is not brought into the scrotum.
Okay.
So
and testicular cancer risk?
We can reduce the risk, sir, but it does not become as the normal population.
Okay. Right. So, okay. So I need to give clarity on this matter. So first point is that within what age the undescended testis can be operated? The undescended testis can be operated at any age, literally even at the age of 25. But in order to preserve the spermatogenic function, it is best operated within 18 months of life. Okay. Many times people don't operate within 1 year and operate between the 1 year and 18 months because the risk of anesthetics between less than age of 1 is much higher. The maximum time that is allowed is 18 months. So most of the hospitals in UK will do the undescended testis surgery just after the first birthday. Okay? Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
So any time from the birth to 18 months you can operate. And the reason why you're operating is to preserve the spermatogenic function. The risk of cancer has absolutely no impact whatsoever. The only thing is the undescended testis, operated undescended testis becomes much more susceptible for examination, and therefore early cancer pickups happen. So it doesn't alter I mean, if there are studies which says there is a slight reduction in risk, it may be there, may not be there. But the primary reason cancers happen in undescended testis is because of the genetic change. Just because you reduce the testis to the scrotal sac does not alter the genetic change that has already happened. And that is the reason the contralateral testis also is more susceptible for cancer. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So the take-home message is that testicular undescended testis are best operated within 18 months, preferably just in and around 1 year. And the cancer risk does not largely reduce. Even if there is a reduction, it is very minute. The more important reason, it becomes easily accessible for examination. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
Now we go to Boni now and say, so undescended testis is something which Praveen has covered. Now, what else in the history that can you elicit from this patient?
Whether any family history of testicular malignancy?
Is there a family history of testicular malignancy? Is there a family history? Like kidney or prostate, is there a family history for testicular malignancy, Puni?
Yes, if the brother has.
You can say yes or no, it's fine.
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
sir. Okay.
There is association.
There is.
Okay.
There is association.
Okay. So the association for family history and testicular cancer is extremely small and weak. Okay. It's not that one family member gets it, the whole lot of family member will get it as well. It is very, very low. The transmissions are very, very low. Is that okay? Now, what else? Now that you have a patient with a testicular tumor, what else will you ask as a history? Priyank.
I want to ask, sir, if there is any abdominal mass.
Yes. Excellent. Yes. Okay. Abdominal mass. Yes.
Then is there any bilateral lower limb swelling was there? Any symptoms?
Very good. Excellent.
Any sir, neck mass was there anytime?
Okay, neck mass. Okay, accepted. What else?
Any sir symptoms of
what is the most common?
Cough, hemoptysis, and breathlessness.
Yes. Excellent. So cough hemoptysis is a very important history that you need to elicit in patients with testicular masses. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
In addition to that, Praveen, there are a couple of other histories that you want to ask. What is that?
Sir, any history of exposure to tuberculosis in the...
In addition to what Priyank said.
Yes, sir. Any history of tuberculosis, exposure to tuberculosis in past. And since this is a swelling, I would like to has a scrotal history of a scrotal biopsy also is there in this patient. So I would like to ask for any inguinal swellings also.
Excellent. You get a credit for that. So one thing which all of you never mentioned, and I was hoping you guys will mention, is loss of weight and loss of appetite.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds extremely basic, but that is very important as well. Yes. And
Yes.
any neck swelling, you will get patients who often report alteration in voice because the neck swelling compresses the trachea.
Yes.
Yeah. For example, I can't name the patient's name, but one of my patients, had came to me. He's a singer who performs Calcutta, and his history was alteration in voice. And after that, the local doctor did a CT neck. It's a vocal cord tumor, and then found to have a multiple lymph nodes. Went on to a CT chest, multiple nodes in and then went on. Finally, they found a testicular mass. So neck. So the way to keep this in mind is that, okay, if there is a testicular mass, where will it spread, and what presentation of symptoms will it have? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to alter this tiny bit, and I'm going to say this is a 15-year-old, not a 22-year-old. There is one another history you want to ask. What is that? A 15-year-old boy, a 14-year-old boy, girl. Anybody who anybody who tells gets 2 credit points.
Any other swellings in the body, sir?
Any other swelling in the body? That's a good way to tell. But
To
what
rule out
specific?
lymphoma.
Well done. Who said that?
Me, Praveen.
Praveen gets double credit. So you ask for history of bleeding from the gums.
Yes.
Okay. More than lymphoma, they will have AML, acute myeloid leukemia, and they may have a testicular deposit and a slight swelling with bleeding from the gums. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, guys.
Yes.
So if you tell that, then the examiner will be super happy, or he'll be thinking, oh, this guy knows too much. So how you play it, I don't know. So leave it to you and the examiner. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions at this point of time before we move forward? Any
We
questions?
also want to ask about any breast enlargement and
yes, go on.
Yes, his
you want to
history
ask about breast enlargement? Yes, as if it is a manifesting, if it's a secreting tumor. Yes, very good, excellent point. The secreting tumors will have breast enlargement. Excellent point.
Yes.
Anything else?
And is pertaining to the testicular carcinoma case, his history of infertility, if anything is there, because he is still unmarried. So
yeah, thanks for pointing it out, Praveen. I thought we are not moving forward from history. That's why. So I say it again. Boni?
Any history of loss of libido?
Boni, you wanted to tell something? History of loss of libido. I'm switching off my my internet, my video, just to stop just to get a better connectivity. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay. So Boni, you want to talk about infertility and testicular cancer. Quickly, what do you want to elicit in the history?
Whether there is any loss of libido, is there any gynecomastia?
Okay. And what tumors will cause these 2 points?
Leydig cell tumor.
Because of secretion of what?
Secretion of FSH and LH.
Okay. So, yes, that's a good point. So you get credits for that. What else you want to ask in the history? Is he married or unmarried? Is he having children or not having children? Is that okay?
yes, sir.
Yes.
Is that all right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we'll go into examination. Examination shows is a good performance status. Okay. His ECOG is 0. Pulse BP is okay. No pararectus. No clubbing. Abdomen soft, moves well with respiration. No dilated veins and scars. No suprapubic fullness, renal angle fullness, palpation soft. Organomegaly is not there. Bladder not palpable. DRE normal. Examination shows a 6 centimeter testicular mass with ulceration and bilateral inguinal nodes. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. What else you want to examine at this point of time? I have not put there, but what else you want to examine? Priyank?
Sir,
what, in addition to what you have seen here, pertaining to this case?
Pertaining to the swelling, I want to see the consistency of the swelling. The overlying skin is mobile or not. Then to get about the swelling is possible or not. Any epidermis is palpable, spermatic cord, contralateral testes.
Okay, skin on the testis is ulcerated, spermatic cord slightly thickened, bilateral inguinal nodes present, right side testis is normal to feel. Move on. What else you want to examine the patient for? Think of the history, you know the answer here. And I will also give you a clue. Go back to the previous slide, and that those points that you want to examine is missing in this examination list.
Supraclavicular lymph node.
Clavicular.
Yes, you want to palpate supraclavicular lymph nodes, and you also want to do a chest examination, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You want to auscultate for. You want to inspect, auscultate, inspect, percuss, auscultate for what? What do you want to examine in the chest?
Sir, any on percussion, sir, dull knot will be there if there is a lung mets, and on auscultation there will be crepitations will be there.
Bete, do you think a lung met will cause crepitation and auscultation findings? Multiple small pulmonary nodules will not have any of these findings. So if you have the findings that you're mentioning, what is the inference of the finding? You are right. What you asked, so you're asking for pleural effusion, or you're looking for pleural effusion, you're looking for alteration in the breath entry. Okay, that is what you're looking for. I understand that. What is the inference from there?
There may be a compressing mediastinum mass.
Correct. And pleural effusion means?
Extensive metastasis to the lung.
Pleural mets, yeah, or surface of the lung mets, not intrapulmonary mets. It's surface of the lung mets. Extend. So you imagine the lung is a inflatable organ. So if you are going to have, inevitably the mets will be in the meat of the lung. But when it comes to the periphery of the lung, it starts to have pleural effusion. Or if you have a metastasis in the pleura itself. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. Excellent. And supraclavicular lymph nodes, very, very essential. If you don't mention supraclavicular lymph nodes present or not present, if I'm the examiner, I will not hesitate to fail you. Okay?
Yes.
Very important aspect of the examination. All right. So we'll go to Boni and say, Boni, okay, this is the patient that you have in front of you. What test are you going to order?
I'll do a hemogram, serum creatinine, tumor markers.
Okay. Hemogram, serum creatinine, and tumor markers. Okay, done. Then what else?
I also do a USG of the scrotum to see for the contralateral testis also.
So you don't want to see this testis. You're happy with this testis.
Want to see this testis also, and also the contralateral testis.
So you want to see this testis and the opposite testis. I'm getting a call from the hospital. Just stay online, guys. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So sorry, guys. Call from the hospital. Okay. So so where were we?
Investigations.
Investigation. So hemogram. Boni said hemogram, creatinine. Why he doesn't want to know the electrolytes, I don't understand. Most of the anesthetists will want to know the electrolytes as well. Then you said tumor markers, and he said ultrasound for the contralateral testis. And I asked the question, what happened to the same testis? Do you not want to know the same testis state?
Yes, I also want to know the same testis status also.
Okay. Now, Priyank, you are going to tell me the rationalization of each of the tests that Boni said. Is he doing it properly, or is he just doing it because his boss does it?
Yes, sir.
Oh, he does it because his boss does it, is it?
No, sir. Hemogram for his hemogram will also tell about his general status and is there any and then creatinine for any renal function that we can it can be useful for intraoperative also and for chemotherapy also.
Okay, excellent.
Then electrolytes and PT-INR, that is for anesthetic purpose.
Okay.
And tumor markers, that is to tumor markers are just for to see if it is a seminomatous or non-seminomatous germ cell tumor, and LDH for tumor burden.
Okay, that's all right. So now, and he said ultrasound scan. What is the reliability of ultrasound scan as far as testis tumors are concerned?
For testicular tumors, sir, with ultrasound, we can see if there is any on contralateral side, if there is any non-palpable tumor or microlithiasis is there or not. And and on the ipsilateral side, we can see the exact size of the lesion. If the any normal testicular parenchyma is there, or it is involving the whole testis, on Doppler we can know the vascularity of the mass. And is there any secondary hydrocele is there or not?
Okay. No, the answer I wanted, I mean, you have given a very descriptive answer, and I fully give credit for that. The reliability of ultrasound as a diagnostic tool is near 100%. Okay. If the ultrasound shows tumor, it is tumor. Unless the ultrasound is done by somebody who is not a doctor at all. So ultrasound diagnosis of testicular tumor are exceptionally reliable. Is that clear? Yes, and what are the things in the ultrasound you have already examined, you have already explained. So full credits for what you said. So we'll move to Praveen. And Praveen, yes, you want to do some more tests in terms of, we'll dwell into tumor markers in a minute, but can you tell me what else as a test you want to do other than ultrasound of the testis that was done by Boni and Priyank?
Yes, sir. Initially, in this patient, particularly in this patient, actually he had a biopsy also done. So I want to review the biopsy of that specimen also. And after that, if that biopsy is showing me the tumor, then I would like to further go and do CCT abdomen and pelvis. After seeing the testicular marker report.
The path review is something that you want to do, and I fully concur with that. You are lucky that you will have a path in this case, but in a standard case in your exam will not have a path with you. Yeah. So yes, I'm asking about metastatic workup. That's what I am asking.
Yes, sir. CCT abdomen and pelvis and CT thorax.
Okay. CCT abdomen and pelvis, CT thorax with contrast or without contrast?
With contrast, sir. HRCT.
So with contrast. Okay. Now this is a debatable point. So see how the examiner mood is. Okay. The examiner will ask you, okay, especially somebody who is a senior examiner, will say, why not a chest X-ray? Boni, why not a chest X-ray? Why are you doing a CT? And why not an FDG PET? Bada sexy tool hai yaar. FDG 18 PET karo.
FDG PET is not useful in primary staging of the testicular tumor.
Only in residual masses, and that
only in
seminoma.
seminoma with mass more than 3 centimeter we'll do FDG PET. Residual mass more than 3 centimeter.
All of you get full credits for that answer. Okay, FDG18 PET is not a reliable test in the primary staging of testicular tumor, and the latest EAU guidelines 2020 has clearly told, in fact they have taken out all the references of FDG18 PET itself and said that it should not be done in the primary setting. Well done, good answer, very appreciative. Now as regards CECT chest X-ray, chest X-ray, Priyank, you want to give an answer to that? What about chest X-ray, plain CT chest, contrast CT chest? Amongst the three, which one do you want to do and why?
I want to do, sir, contrast enhanced CT scan of the chest, because it is more sensitive and specific than the other modalities. And in 10 to 15% patient of non-seminomatous germ cell tumor, there may be pulmonary nodule which are not visible on chest X-ray, and that can be diagnosed only on CT scan.
Okay. So well done, for which I will pass you. I will give you a pass for that. But can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me, guys?
Hello? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
One second. Yeah, it's okay. நாளைக்கு பண்ணிக்கலாம். No problem. எப்ப கிடைக்குமோ பண்ணுங்கம்மா, விடுமா, ஒன்றும் பிரச்சனை இல்லை. So I'm so sorry, guys. I'm getting disturbed from the hospital. Right. So between chest X-ray, plain CT chest, and CT thorax, contrast CT thorax, chest X-ray has a very high specificity but low sensitivity. Meaning, if there is a shadow in the chest X-ray, the probability the patient has a pulmonary met is very high. Am I clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
The next, which will be sensitive, which will be specific and sensitive decently 80-85% to 90%, is a plain CT chest. And lastly, contrast CT chest. The problem with the contrast CT chest that it picks up small tiny nodules, or what we call indeterminate nodules, yes, which then becomes a subject for further anxiety and follow-up and all. So at least in my center, I tend to do a plain CT chest, not a contrast CT chest. But if you tell the examiner that I will do a plain CT of chest and abdomen and then a contrast CT chest and abdomen, as an examiner, I cannot fail you. Your answers are acceptable. But you should understand, as the test becomes more refined, the sensitivity increases, the specificity comes down. Is that okay?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Yes.
Clear? Okay.
Yes.
So next we are going to talk about definitely we need to talk about tumor markers. Yes, Priyank?
Yes, sir.
The 3 tumor markers, you only mentioned the 3 tumor markers to me. What are the 3 most important tumor markers that you want to follow? And quickly tell me the biochemistry of these 3 tumor markers. I want to know the half-life and other conditions when these tumor markers will be elevated, and the inference towards the testicular mass. If alpha fetoprotein is high, what does it mean? If it is low, what does it mean? Beta HCG is high, what does it mean? That's what I want, not theory.
Yes.
Shoot.
Alpha fetoprotein is, sir, elevated in 75 to 80% of non-seminomatous germ cell tumor, and it is never elevated in pure seminomas. And alpha fetoprotein half-life is around 2 to 6 days. And it can be falsely, it is also elevated in other conditions like hepatobiliary cancer, colon cancer, stomach cancer, and sir, beta HCG, it has half-life of around 24 to 36 hours, and it is elevated in 70 to 80% of non-seminomatous germ cell tumor and 10 to 15% of seminomas.
Which one you're talking now?
Beta HCG.
Beta HCG. Okay, beta HCG. What
In
is the
15%
most
of seminoma,
important? Yeah, 10% to 15% of seminoma, beta HCG gets elevated. That's absolutely right. Question to you is, if you have a persistently elevated beta HCG, what tumor do you suspect inside?
Sir, choriocarcinoma, sir, non-seminomatous germ cell tumor.
Non-seminomatous germ cell tumor, especially choriocarcinoma. Okay, LDH?
LDH is not specific for any tumor, sir, but it depicts the tumor burden and response to the treatment.
Okay, now I've done an orchidectomy. All right?
Yes.
After what time should I test the testicular markers? 1 week, 10 days, 1 day, 1 month? Go.
It's 3 weeks, sir, at 21 days, because we have to see for passage of around 4 half-lives of these tumor markers. So that is around 21 days.
So the answer that you should say is that it depends on how elevated the tumor marker is. It depends upon the kinetics of the tumor marker, right?
Yes.
So if you have a alpha feta protein which is only 25, within 1 week it will normalize. Yes, but if the alpha feta protein is, say, let us say 700 or 1500 or 10,000, it's going to take at least a couple of half-lives before it comes down to acceptable levels. So your answer is, it anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks time it will take for the tumor markers to normalize. Expecting them to be normalized by about 3 to 4 weeks is reasonable. It depends upon the elevated level and the half-life kinetics. Yes?
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So, right, the patient is unmarried. As Boni rightly said, patient is unmarried, he doesn't have a kid. What else do you want to do at this stage with this guy? I've given a clue.
Semen analysis.
So you want to preserve semen sample for future use.
Preservation.
How will you collect? How many samples will you collect? How will you preserve? One of you, Praveen, how
Yes,
many
sir.
samples will you ask him to collect?
So I'm not sure about how many samples. Whatever the collection
2
is there,
samples.
it has to.
Answer is 2 samples.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have to ask them to collect 2 samples at an interval of 48 hours if possible. But I tend to tell the patient, don't bother about that. Give 2 samples in 2 consecutive days. They usually, what my andrology lab does is that they'll collect the sample, they'll do a then and there assessment of the semen test to see whether there are sperms worth storage, and they will then spin it, make it to a pellet and store it up. If there are no sperms to store, then they will call me and say, sir, if patient is azoospermic, what should we do? We still print a report and file it in the notes for medical legal reasons. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
In which case, if your patient is azoospermic, I ask them to go and do it one more time the next day. And then finally, both the reports are printed and filed in the notes for medical legal reasons and given a copy to the patient to ensure that the patient doesn't go back and tell, oh, this doctor took off my testis and hence I'm impotent now. I'm azoospermic.
Okay.
Clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So, right. So, these are the parameters now. Can you see the screen?
No, sir.
Guys, the screen?
No, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is
Nothing.
seen, sir.
It is visible.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, you saw the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first screen is hemogram and creatinine, which was normal. The second screen is alpha fetoprotein, which is 12,800. HCG is 2.7. LDH is 260. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Shall we move forward?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So that CT abdomen and chest, well, cheekily, Nitesh has given us to see the testicular tumor itself. Okay. And that is, what do you, I mean, in the examination, they'll ask you to read the CT and all. Okay. So, I mean, this is not a session to how to read a CT and MR for exams. But remember, I'm going to give you a clue. Okay, this is the IVC. That is the aorta. Okay, that is the renal artery. So you can see a huge mass of tumor. Yeah, the lymph nodes. Is that okay? I've given the clue. I've given the clue. Yeah, and then you can see nodes, nodules in the lung as well. Here, there's a big nodule.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, and the guy, the path report was reviewed, and they said it's a yolk sac tumor of the right side with multiple nodes and metastasis. And yeah, is that clear? I've given all the clues now. All right.
Yes, sir.
So now I'm going to ask you a question. We'll stop there and we'll discuss what stage is this one.
Stage 3, sir.
Stage 3C, sir.
Okay.
3C.
For staging purpose, we'll need post-orchidectomy status
Markers.
and post-orchidectomy tumor markers.
Yeah.
We don't have that.
Okay. We don't
Orchidectomy is
have
done,
that.
no?
I will give you that. So for purpose of understanding, okay, before we move forward, I'm going to have a slight digress and then we'll come to staging and further management. At this stage, okay, this guy has had a biopsy outside that shows yolk sac tumor, and then he has nodules in the lungs and all. I'm going to give you a scenario. This guy didn't have those tumors, the biopsy. He has come to you primarily, you have examined, you thought it was testicular tumor, you did a CT, it shows all these nodules. What will you do now? Priyank. Or Praveen. Priyank answer the last question. Praveen, go.
Yes, sir. Since the tumor burden in the in the abdomen, the retroperitoneal nodes are already enlarged, and there is large burden of tumor with the metastatic tumor in the lung. We can even start upfront chemotherapy for this patient.
How will you do chemotherapy? Okay. Your medical oncologist is going to give chemotherapy for this guy without a biopsy? Huh?
No, sir. After orchidectomy. So orchidectomy is already
okay.
done. No,
so that's a question I wanted to ask you. This guy has a super ECOG status of 0. Okay, he's a nice guy. He's all right. You can take him to do an orchidectomy. Many a times in the cancer hospital, we get patients who are sick. All right.
Yes.
They can't even get up and walk. Meds, riddled with meds. My question to you, is biopsy essential?
In those patients, it is not essential.
Is biopsy essential?
If the patient,
so you don't need a biopsy?
No, sir. Alpha fetoprotein is already raised for several thousand folds high. So we will not require a biopsy in such kind of patients. And we can go ahead with, we know that this is a non-seminomatous germ cell tumor now. So we can go ahead and give him the chemotherapy.
Okay. Okay. Priyank, what will you do? Question you understand? Diffusely metastatic disease, poor performance status in a metastatic setting, is a pre-chemotherapy orchidectomy essential or not? That's a question.
No, sir. In diffuse metastasis and patient is means not very stable, then we can directly go for upfront chemotherapy based on the tumor markers, sir.
Okay. Right. All of you, okay. Is Boni having a different answer? Let's ask Boni before we answer this.
For chemotherapy, the performance status, cisplatin-based chemotherapy, the performance status should be good.
His performance status is not good. That's why yeah, he's not able to do.
Then we can give him.
We can avoid bleomycin and give the rest of the chemotherapy.
We can give carboplatin to this patient.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, so answer to the question. Pre-procedure pre-chemotherapy orchidectomy is not essential in patients who have diffuse metastatic disease, where the metastatic burden causes more quality of life issues in patients. Am I clear? But what the medical oncologist will not do is that they will not give a cytotoxic chemotherapy without some form of biopsy. So the best thing to do is that do an ultrasound guided or a CT guided biopsy. Takes about 5 minutes, 10 minutes to do from the chest or the abdomen, and then start the patient on chemotherapy. Now, the question also you asked is BEP regime. So what we tend to do is BEP, to give a BEP in a ECOG 2 or 3 patient is going to be very tough. He won't take the BEP well. Yes. So we give them platinum based therapy first cycle or first dose that gives some response for us to give a top up on top of the etoposide and bleomycin after the platinum is given. That gives the buying time for that treatment. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So now this patient had a good performance status. Now the examiner will ask you, if inevitably testicular tumor with a small testicular tumor without any lung or abdominal finding sadly doesn't come in the exam. In the exam, you inevitably gets a palpable mass as testicular swelling, and if you put auscultate the chest, especially in the medical college, you will get nice crepes there. Yes, that's the examiner question for you. So the examiner will definitely ask you a question, can I just do chemotherapy instead of doing an orchidectomy? That's a question he's going to ask. You understand the rationale of thinking about that? Answer to that is you can do it, provided inevitably medical oncologists will want a small biopsy which can be done under local anesthesia, so that a biopsy is taken and further chemotherapy given, so that orchidectomy can be reserved for a later date. Right. Going on to a good performance status patient. Yeah, like the patient that we are discussing right now. So in this case, Nitesh decided to do an orchidectomy along with a scrotectomy. Is he justified or not justified?
Yes, sir. He's justified in. We are justified in doing a scrotectomy, wide excision of the scrotal skin covering the ulcer part.
Yeah. And how about doing bilateral inguinal node dissection as well? अरे उधर है साथ उधर भी निकाल देना उसको साथ.
No, sir. No point in doing inguinal lymph node dissection in this patient, because already he is having so much of retroperitoneal burden, and we are opt to give a chemotherapy in these patients. So there will be no role of any lymph node dissection in these patients.
Yes, lymph node dissection in the inguinal area, even though it is spread there, which is obvious from the finding, that is not justified because the patient needs to have chemotherapy, and therefore any morbidity increasing surgery is best avoided at that time. Yeah, clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes. Super. Okay. Now, question to Boni. This patient has undergone okay. Now this patient is a very complicated patient with lots of things and all. Boni, can you tell me the steps of inguinal orchidectomy? Clear-cut steps of inguinal orchidectomy. From anesthesia to skin suture.
Under spinal anesthesia, we give oblique skin incision 2 centimeters above the inguinal skin crease. We deepen to the, we incise the campus and scarpus fascia and external oblique aponeurosis. We mobilize the spermatic cord and skeletonize it. We apply a clamp and then mobilize the testis into the inguinal region. We separately ligate the vas deferens and the spermatic cord with non-absorbable suture, and we'll remove the testis and transfix the cord.
Okay. What non-absorbable suture will you use to transfix?
We can use silk.
Why do you want to use a non-absorbable suture?
That suture can help me in future if we are doing retroperitoneal lymph node dissection. The remaining part of the cord can be removed through that, and any amount of metastasis in the remaining part of the cord can be tackled with this.
Okay. All right. Good point. I put a Prolene thread there, but everybody has different things. Silk thread is absolutely reliable to be put as well. So put a silk thread in the transfixed point of the cord and leave a long silk thread so that you can pick it up later in the future. Absolutely right. How will you close the external oblique aponeurosis and how will you close the skin?
The external oblique aponeurosis is being closed with Vicryl 20 or 30 in continuous manner, and the skin can be closed with subcuticular sutures.
Okay, everybody is different. I tend to close external oblique aponeurosis with Prolene or PDS so that it takes 9 months or 1 year to absorb or a non-absorbing suture, because they are aponeurosis. They take a phenomenal time to heal. Yes. And in the process, I obliterate the inguinal canal completely. Am I clear?
Yes.
Yes.
And skin is subcutaneous. That's fine. And give a good scrotal support as well. Now, Praveen, you tell me Shivasu's maneuver.
Shivasu's maneuver is when we want what we do is it is a type of testicular biopsy where once we have delivered the testis outside from the inguinal incision, we clamp the spermatic cord and keep some.
Praveen, I'm going to stop you for 1 second. Praveen, yes. I'm going to stop you for 1 second. Now, in case of testicular, right. I want to clarify this point to all of you. If you are going with an idea to do orchidectomy,
yes, sir,
you don't need to mobilize the testis and bring it out before you clamp it. So what you do is you open the external oblique, go to the deep ring, lift the cord there, clamp, cut, divide. Even before you mobilize the testis. Am I clear about this concept?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If you are in a situation where you are suspecting tumor, you want to do a testicular preserving surgery, partial orchidectomy, then that is where Shivasu's maneuver comes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, in which case you need to mobilize the testis and then only you apply the clamp.
Yes.
Yeah, bowel clamp, soft bowel clamp, yeah, is what you apply. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. So, am I clear about the concepts?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, now this comes as yolk sac tumor. Okay. Now, question 2, we have asked, Praveen, we asked, so Priyank, your turn now.
Yes,
that's all Nitesh has given me as the PowerPoint slide. I'm asking you, as a consultant, what else as findings do you want to find in the yolk sac tumor that has been given to me? This is a report given to me. What else am I looking for?
Yes, sir. We have to see for lymphovascular invasion and any embryonal carcinoma component is there or not.
Excellent point. Excellent point. And one more point is mitosis. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So therefore, I'm asking you a question. And what are the prognostic features? What type of tumor? This is a non-seminamatous germ cell tumor, right?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So guys, so what are the prognostic factors in a non-seminamatous germ cell tumor? Priyank?
One is this lymphovascular invasion, embryonal carcinoma components. Then T stage, pathological T stage.
Yeah.
Then
and mitotic
then
figure.
any
mitotic figures. Okay. So okay. Now I'm going to move the question to Praveen. We'll ask the question to Boni. Boni, in the case of seminamatous tumor, yeah, what are the prognostic features?
The size of the tumor less than 4 centimeter and involvement of rete testis.
Stromal invasion.
Stromal.
Super. These are the most important tumor marker prognostic features as far as seminoma and non-seminomatous tumors are concerned. Yeah, non-seminomatous germ cell tumor. Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to be an examiner who is very picky, and I'm going to ask Praveen. Praveen,
Yes, sir.
give
Yes,
me
sir.
the most important singular prognostic feature in non-seminomatous. The most important of all, whatever we discussed.
Lymphovascular invasion.
Super.
Sir.
And Priyank, what is the most important prognostic feature for seminoma?
There is stromal involvement, sir. Related stage.
Yeah. T stage, that is the size of the thing, and stromal. Excellent. Guys, you guys are really doing well, and I'm very appreciative of that. Now, we go into the management of this guy. So, Nitesh has done a nice oculectomy. Wound is healing well. Now, this patient is asking me, sir, what should I do next? Boni, what will I do next?
After 4 to 6 weeks, we'll repeat a tumor marker again for the staging purpose.
Boni, I'm going to be very picky and say, so you have a patient who has had a testicular tumor, multiple pulmonary mets, and you want me to wait for 6 weeks to see just the tumor marker is coming down? And question to you, will the tumor marker come down? Will it come down?
York-Sett tumor has a favorable prognosis. In this case, the tumor marker will not come. Will not come.
Exactly. So the tumor is spread outside. See, the tumor marker falling down to normal is applicable for intratesticular tumor. In cases where already spread has happened, those spread sites is going to secrete the tumor markers. Why bother to wait for 6 weeks?
Yes.
Yes. So the answer that you should give is that, sir, I will start chemotherapy on this patient at the earliest possible opportunity. Right?
Yes.
Correct. Okay. Now we'll ask Praveen. Praveen, what is the earliest possible opportunity?
Sir, within 1 week to 10 days, the scrotal wound will heal, sir. The inguinal wound,
Yes.
sorry. The inguinal wound, and within 10 days, we can start after 10 days, we can start the chemotherapy.
Absolutely correct. 7 to 10 days is enough for the patient's wound to reasonably heal, at which point of time chemotherapy could be initiated. Because the most important treatment for this guy is chemotherapy, not orchidectomy. Orchidectomy is reducing or improving the quality of life. A fungating tumor present there, especially with the onset of chemotherapy, will fungate even more. So you want to get rid of it so that patient can go ahead with the treatment, right?
Yes.
You can even say that even if I don't do orchidectomy, I can give chemotherapy and come back and do orchidectomy later. That's also fine. If the same patient didn't have a fungating lesion on the skin, if you choose a pathway to say that I'm going to give chemo and then come back later, you are absolutely justified. Nobody can find fault with you. So the most important treatment for this patient is chemotherapy, and hence going on to do chemotherapy is the most important task. And you should be able to start chemotherapy within 7 to 10 days of the orchidectomy. What happens is I do a day case procedure, they go home, the next week they come, review histology, go to the medical oncology room, which is next door to me, and start chemotherapy the day after. That is 8th day, they'll start off chemotherapy. Clear? Priyank? Okay. What chemotherapy do you want to give this guy? I do not know till what time are we signing up to this? I can go on for next 3 hours and all of you will be bored to death. Till what time are we supposed to carry on this one?
So usually we carry on for 1.5 hours.
Okay. Whenever you get bored, raise your hands and say, or send me a chat and say that stop. I will stop.
Answer, ask Nitesh.
All right. So Priyank, question to you.
Yes, sir.
Want to give this guy?
Sir,
is Priyank online? I think Priyank.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I want to do risk stratification according to that IGCCCG. He is in poor risk category, and I want to give him 4 cycles of BEP, sir.
Okay. So you're right. Theoretically, 4 cycles of BEP is what I would want to say. But how it works is like this: patient gets 3 cycles BEP, and then a 4th cycle as and when, if the patient is fit and tolerating well, we go to the 4th one. Okay. We try and aim to give three. That's what we try and aim. And if patient is tolerating 3 cycles well, we will definitely top up the 4th one. Is that all right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Now, question to Praveen. Boni, what side effects? Now, I am the patient. You counsel me saying that, "Arey, tere ko मैं BEP देने वाले हूँ." मैं बोलूँगा, "Sir, BEP क्या है? उसके वजह से मुझे क्या होगा?" What is your answer? What is going to happen to me because of BEP?
It consists of 3 drugs: bleomycin, etoposide, and cisplatin. The bleomycin can cause pneumonitis and pulmonary fibrosis. Etoposide, there will be chances of bone marrow depression, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. And in cisplatin, there are chances that it's a nephrotoxic drug. The patient may have altered renal function, neuropathy, hearing loss, and cardiotoxicity also.
Very nicely covered. So you tell me this, I want to run through the other door and say I'll die with cancer rather than having all these things. So you want to tell him in a nicer way, you want to tell him what percentage of patients will have it. So what are the grades of toxicity of chemotherapy? Praveen, do you want to take that answer?
Yes, sir. In the out of 3, the main problematic drug in this ECOG 0 patient will be bleomycin. So some patients do not tolerate bleomycin. So I will tell him that initially we'll give you 1 cycle of the chemotherapy and see how you respond.
Okay.
If he's having any untoward side effect among any of these drugs, like in cisplatin, if he's having nephrotoxicity is first to manifest, and in bleomycin pulmonary symptoms are first to manifest, then accordingly I will taper and add the other drugs or continue with the same if he's tolerating.
That's so okay. So you need to tell what percentage of patients will have such high rated toxicity.
Pulmonary fibrosis less than 5%, sir, and other symptoms like bone marrow depression and nephrotoxicity in 10 to 15% of patients.
The severe pulmonary fibrosis or severe pneumonitis, grade 3-4 toxicity in bleomycin happens thankfully less than 5%. So what you tell the patient is that the majority of the patients will have some lung symptoms, but they inevitably will tolerate it okay, especially young patients, and therefore you don't need to worry about it. As regards cisplatin, there'll be definitely some nephrotoxicity, but thankfully neuro and autotoxicity is not that high. I'm not saying that is not common. It is very much a part of toxicity of cisplatin, but thankfully it is not very high, and therefore as long as we keep an eye on your creatinine, we should be all right. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you need to counsel the patient to explain that they will have some side effects, but we will keep an eye on that. And as Praveen said, we give first cycle, reassess the situation. If the patient tolerating first cycle, then we give 2 and 3, reassess one more time and give 4 at that point of time. Okay, Priyank. Now, when will you do imaging to see whether he is responding or not? At the end of first cycle, second cycle, third cycle, fourth cycle?
Sir, I will assess, sir, after 3 cycles.
Okay. Any other takers?
By imaging.
Priyank and Boni, do Priyank, Priyank says 3 cycles. Will Boni and Praveen agree as well?
After 2 cycles, we'll repeat CT scan after 14 days of the second cycle.
Okay.
Sir,
now another one for second cycles.
4 weeks before after the last cycle of the chemotherapy, if at all we have to repeat CT scan, we have to wait 3 to 4 weeks at least, and then repeat the CT scans. Otherwise, we will have false interpretation of the CT report.
So we have 3 different opinions expressed now, right? One said 4 cycles, other said 3 cycles, other said 2. 2 or 1? Okay.
2, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So okay, so this patient has palpable lymph nodes. Yeah, it is an easy clinical marker for you to adjust, to understand whether the patient is having response or not. You don't need to repeat the CT often. So I tend to do CT scan only after the third cycle and decide whether fourth cycle will be going ahead. So I use RECIST criteria to understand. What is RECIST criteria, Praveen?
Yes, sir. This criteria is based on the CT scan, follow-up CT scan after chemotherapy. It will tell about the complete regression, complete response, partial response, or no response. If there is a complete or less than 10% of tumor remaining after giving the chemotherapy, it is taken under complete response. And if there is 30% of tumor remaining, then it is around 30% of tumor remaining, then it is a partial response. And if it is more than 30% or there is no regression of the tumor, then it is taken as no response.
Okay, good. So it's response evaluation criteria in solid tumors. RECIST, yeah? RECIST, yeah? Right. So,
Yes.
we use that to. I tend to use it only at three after the 3 cycles. Okay. So once again, this is very variable between the consultants. So you will be better off following what your hospital policy is and tell the examiner, this is what we do in our clinic. But generally, most of the medical oncologists will do a CT at the end of 3 cycles and decide whether they're going to give the 4th one or not. That's what we tend to do normally. Okay. In those patients where there is super burden and we have already upfront decided the 4th cycle, at the start itself, we are saying, oh, we are going to give 4 BEP for this guy. If the 3rd cycle, if the patient is showing good response and very little side effects, we carry on with the 4th and do the thing after the 4th cycle. So after the completion of chemotherapy, you wait for 4 to 6 weeks. At that time, I tend to wait 6 weeks. Some people will do 4. I tend to wait 6 weeks for repeating the imaging and all the tumor markers at the same time. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. Now, Priyank, I asked about staging, right? Stage 1, 2, 3 in testicular tumor. How will you you don't need to give 1A, 1, 2, 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B and all. Just tell me what are the gross principles behind it. What is stage 1, stage 2 and stage 3?
Sir, stage 1 tumor is, sir, any T stage with N0 and S0.
Okay. Stage 2?
Stage 2 tumors are, sir, any T with N1 to 3 and up to S1.
Yeah.
And
good. Very good. 3, you're going well.
Stage 3 is, sir, any T, any N, but with S2, S3 and metastasis, sir, pulmonary or non-pulmonary.
M is there. Yeah. Non-pulmonary becomes even worse. That's all. So that is so that's going to subdivide the stage 3. But as far as you are concerned, what you understand is that stage 1 is primarily tumor confined to the testis. Stage 2 is nodal metastasis. Stage 3 is visceral mets. Yes? So that's how you tell in your head. And S1, S2, S3 you need to know because it is important for repeat when you have already treated with the first cycle or first line of chemotherapy and then you have a persistent of tumor markers, how are you going to behave with that? All right.
Yes, sir.
So we still have about 7 minutes left. I'm going to ask one question to Praveen. Praveen, assuming that this was a seminamatous tumor,
yes,
and completely no evidence of mets at the beginning itself.
Yes, sir.
So what I'm trying to ask you is, in seminamatous tumor, which is what is going to be very common in your exam purposes. So seminamatous tumor, if there is no evidence of any mets, how will you manage the patient after your orchidectomy?
Yes, I want to know the histopathology report, sir. That which stage it falls into. Which stage it falls into, sir?
4.5 centimeter retate involvement is present.
And any spermatic cord involvement? Any?
No, retate testis is involved. Spermatic cord is not involved.
Not involved.
Yeah.
Sir, in this patient, I would like to do orchidectomy first. Orchidectomy is
Orchidectomy
done.
done.
And
These are the results after
yes, sir.
orchidectomy. I'm asking you what after orchidectomy.
Yes, sir. If it is a clinical stage, this falls into clinical stage 1, sir. Patient falls into clinical stage 1. So I will have a shared decision with him. Either I would like to give him a option of surveillance or surveillance, sir. That's it.
Okay. Or we said or and dragged a bit. What or do you have?
No, sir. I
Surveillance
was
or?
thinking that he is having. I thought he's having retroperitoneal lymph nodes also, but he's
No,
not having the same. So
It's not having retroperitoneal lymph nodes. No.
yes,
Priyank?
sir.
No, sir. I would offer him either radiotherapy or single drug chemotherapy, as patient has risk factor retitis involvement is there, and size is more than 4 centimeters.
Yeah.
So I will give him two options: either radiotherapy or single drug chemotherapy.
Okay. Boni, what is radiotherapy? What is single drug chemotherapy?
Single drug chemotherapy will give carboplatin in this patient as he is having high risk features such as tumor size more than 4 centimeter and retitis involvement. As such, in stage 1 seminoma, the role of radiation therapy is only when patient is not being able to not being able to give chemotherapy or patient refuses for the surveillance. The radiotherapy is out of question in recent management of stage 1 seminoma.
Okay. So in stage 1 seminoma, where it is ultra low risk category, T stage, that is a tumor less than 4 centimeters, absolutely no other features of risk is there, then observation is a choice. But inevitably, at least in my practice, whatever be the low intermediate risk of seminoma, I tend to offer one dose chemotherapy. So the very famous trial came in 2006-7, which showed that one dose chemotherapy with carboplatin, AUC7, is as good as the chemotherapy 5 dose 20 grays. So the chemotherapy 5 dose 20 grays has a side effect profile which includes affecting the ejaculatory function as well. And inevitably, we didn't like it at all. It used to be very common in my training days in 2001, 2 and on. So the standard of care, at least today, is single dose carboplatin in anything which is, even there is a slight risk, that is T, that is more than 4 centimeter, retail testis involvement, spermatic cord, anything that is there, we tend to offer a single dose carboplatin. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Now I will shift the whole scenario and say intermediate risk disease, organ confined tumor in the testis, but non-seminar matters. Okay. Lymphovascular invasion is there. So there is a risk involved, intermediate to high risk. Question to you, how are we going to manage it after this?
Yes.
Any taker? Praveen, take.
Yes, sir. We will start chemotherapy for this patient, sir. Since lymphovascular
What
invasion
chemotherapy
is
will you give?
Sir, BEP, sir. BEP 3 cycles, sir.
You want to give BEP 3 cycles in a patient? You didn't understand the question. It's organ confined disease.
But
it's non-seminoma. Lymphovascular invasion is present, but absolutely no nodes, no pulmonary mets. So this is the situation. Will you give a choice? I'm going to give you
yes, sir.
Observation, single dose BEP, 3 cycle BEP.
Single dose BEP.
Single dose BEP, sir.
Single dose BEP is enough.
2 cycles, sir. Yes, sir.
Single dose BEP is what most of us do. So single dose BEP is enough when there is when we feel that there is a risk but not quantifying enough. If there is no LVI, then observation can also be a choice in non-seminamatous tumor. Now, Boni, okay, I'm this patient. I mean, metastatic tumor is probably I have to take another class for you. We'll just quickly cover non-metastatic and then we'll move forward. So patient has seminamatous tumor or non-seminamatous tumor. You're given one dose chemotherapy, either in form of carboplatin or BEP, how will you follow the patient? How often will you ask them to come? What are the things will you do in terms of a clinical examination? What are the things will you do in terms of investigation? How long will this continue?
For initial 2 years, the follow-up will be frequent. Every 4 monthly, I'll follow the patient. In the form of, I'll do a physical examination of the contralateral testis, examination of the abdomen, and examination of the chest. I'll do tumor markers every 6 monthly, and repeat CT scan every 6 monthly for first 2 years.
Wow. Therapeutic doses of CT, huh? You'll irradiate his chest and abdomen. Okay. That's a very high dose of CT. Praveen, will you modify any of these things?
Yes, a recent study has come which shows that such frequent CT scans are not allowed. At least we can minimize the CT abdomen to the half. At least we were doing 4 per year, so we can do it 2. And rest of the thing, tumor markers, chest X-ray, physical examination, I would agree with him, sir.
Okay. Now, okay, I'll tell you the regime that is followed widely in the NHS is that if you have seminamatous tumor, so I'll tell you the regime for seminamatous and then do it for non-seminamatous. Seminamatous tumor, that is, you will see them every 2, max of 3 months for the first year, every 4 months for the second year, every 6 months third year, then yearly there onwards for 5 if not 10 years. Okay. At each visit, physical examination, as you rightly said, contralateral testis, abdomen, chest, neck is mandatory. You have to, we used to have a stamp. We just put a stamp and then take all of them. And then in terms of investigation, all of them will have routine bloods, including an RFT, but more important, alpha fetoprotein, beta HCG, and LDH will be there. A chest X-ray will be there. That's all. And ultrasound of the contralateral testis and abdomen is done. We used to do only once in 3 months for the first year. At the end of first year, we used to do a CT scan. This is for seminoma because the risk of recurrence is lower. In non-seminamatous tumor, the whole thing is done on a 6-weekly basis. Okay, clinical examination and tumor markers on a 6-weekly basis, 3 monthly ultrasound and chest X-ray. We used to do once in 6 months CT, but our ultrasoundologist was very reliable. So then we moved it to once in a year CT. But if you are going to say once in 6 months CT, from an examination point of view, you are right. There's nothing wrong with that. And you need to take that intense follow-up up to 2 years. Every 6 weeks to 2 months, you see that guy up to 2 years, because the maximum recurrence happens within the first 2 years. Yes? Yes. By 2 years, if there is no recurrence, we start to wean off the chest, the CT scans. We go only with tumor markers, ultrasound, chest X-ray, and clinical examination. Am I clear? So the take-home message is that intense follow-up is required for non-seminamatous tumors, especially the first 2 years. CT can be reduced to 2 CTs instead of 4, if possible, depending upon the reliability of the ultrasoundologist. If the ultrasoundologist is not reliable, then you need to do the 4 CTs. You are right. It's just that there is intense amount of radiation that goes with that. Okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Now, time is 4:33. Shall we continue or stop now? Now, I'm going to stop for a minute and I'm going to ask you guys to ask me questions. Any doubts that you want to ask and clarify?
Yes, sir. I think Nitesh sir had told that there will be questions on the forum, on the Facebook website, sir. I'll just read out those questions.
Yeah, please do.
One thing I wanted to ask, if CECT abdomen and pelvis, we have to do before orchidectomy or after orchidectomy? And is there any benefit of doing pre-orchidectomy?
Is there a benefit of doing pre-orchidectomy?
CT scans, CT abdomen.
I didn't understand the question.
Is there any role of, is there any additional benefit of doing CT abdomen pelvis before orchidectomy? Any additional benefit?
Oh, I understand. Okay, I understand the question. All right. Sorry. So a patient who presents with primary testicular mass, all of them will have a CT abdomen and contrast CT abdomen and plain CT chest as a matter of fact in my practice. That will be the baseline on which I will move forward. That's bottom line. I do it all the time before the orchidectomy. That is, they see me in the OPD, they get their test today itself, tomorrow or day after tomorrow, they come for surgery. That's how they come.
Okay, we can do this after orchidectomy also.
We will quickly discuss the residual mass management as well. But you finish the questions, then we'll go and discuss that.
One question is, does inguinal hernia surgery alter the lymphatic drainage later on if CA testis happens?
Sorry, couldn't understand the question. Say it again.
Sir, patient has history of prior inguinal surgery, and now he is presented with CA testis. Will the lymphatic drainage alter the management?
Will the internet? Oh, I understand. If the prior inguinal surgery was done, let us say in the childhood, yes, or something like that. If there is at least a year gap between the surgery and the presentation of a mass, I don't find many alteration in the lymphatic flow. Okay, especially it is more a problem with the testicular incisions rather than the inguinal incision. Even testicular violation, the probability of inguinal metastasis was only 18%. So whenever a radiotherapy is given, the inguinal areas are covered up in the radiotherapy. So whilst we we insist upon no scrotal incisions, the problem with the scrotal violation causing inguinal mets is only 18%. So therefore, you don't need to go panicky on that. It's best avoided, but if it happens, it happens. As regards inguinal surgery altering the lymphatic flow, not much, unless you have done extensive surgery of some nature. Generally, no. Testicular incisions will alter the flow.
Yes.
Or scrotal incisions.
One more question from Rohit. He says, is there any risk of testicular tumor in retractile testis?
No, absolutely not.
Yes.
Retractile testis is as good as a normal testis.
Yes. And one more question is,
by the way, Rohit, can you? I will clarify the question. A retractile testis is defined as a testis which can be brought down into the scrotal sac comfortably, especially when the child is in a squatting position. That's called retractile testis. Okay? If he is asking about a part undescended testis, that is testis which is lying in the root of the scrotum and not descending completely into the scrotal sac, it will be undescended testis still. Hope I am very clear in what I am saying. Okay.
What implication does loss of testicular sensation have in CA testis?
None of the patients have complained anything like that to me so far. Seems to be of no. I have not come across any patient who has had a problem with that point.
Yes. And does HRCT use contrast or not?
HRCT actually doesn't use contrast. It's high resolution CT. Okay.
Yes.
It's not. If you can do a HRCT plain, you can do a HRCT with contrast. So what we tend to do is HRCT plain. Yeah. HRCT is nothing other than high resolution CT. So what amount of cuts? Say for example, if you take a CT abdomen, the number of cuts that generally ordinary scan center does is a 1 centimeter cut. If at all, they'll do a half a centimeter cut if you're lucky enough. But a properly done CT will be 0.1 mm cut or even less than that, especially the latest CT scanners that are being. So the higher the number of cuts, the resolution of those scans are much higher. The problem with contrast in the chest is that there will be small indeterminate nodules, especially in Indian patients, which will be very confusing as whether they are malignant deposits or not. So at least many of the reliable radiologists, uroradiologists will say a plain CT chest is actually much more informative than a contrast CT chest.
Yes, so one more question from Venkat. What is FPRO technique?
What?
FPRO technique, sir.
Uh,
I think somebody has answered. That is fascia preserving radical orchidectomy.
okay. I'm so sorry. I didn't know the answer. I haven't done any of those things. I do radical orchidectomy where it is very radical. I do not bother much about preserving any fascia at that point of time. I'm so sorry.
Yes, sir. Role of contralateral testicular biopsy in this patient.
Absolutely no. No. There is no need for contralateral testicular biopsy. Why? Okay, let us ask a question to Priyank. Priyank, why? What is the role of contralateral testicular biopsy? And why is it good or not good? Both answers. There is, okay, by the way, you can debate it either way. And I want to answer from both sides.
Sir, contralateral testicular biopsy is advised when one of the means more than one risk factor present for intratubular germ cell neoplasia. If patient has history of undescended testes, or if patient has any azoospermia or decreased spermatogenesis, or if patient has any suspicious lesion in ultrasonography, or patient has extensive microlithiasis, then only there is the role of contralateral testicular biopsy.
Okay, good. A very theoretical answer. Very good. I appreciate that. Cody, if there is testicular microlithiasis, what is the probability the patient will develop surgery? Will develop tumor?
The association between microlithiasis.
The testicular microlithiasis is a separate topic. You have to go and read. But tell me, when does testicular microlithiasis has any implication for us to be important?
As such, the association between testicular microlithiasis and testicular tumor is not proven, but in 2% of the cases, the patient with testicular tumor may have microlithiasis. If there is extensive microlithiasis, it may be associated with intratubular germ cell neoplasia. That may be a risk factor for developing
the probability of extensive testicular microlithiasis, that what we call snowstorm appearance, that patient developing any tumor in the future, especially with the contralateral tumor, is 5%. So it is not, while testicular that is microlithiasis is an important point, it is not the only point on which we do. Okay, Praveen.
Yes, sir.
Now, what is the even if I find a germ cell intratesticular germ cell neoplasia, what is the probability that I will develop that into a malignancy in future?
So very, very sparse chance, sir. I think less than 5% it is, sir.
Less than 15%. So in those days when we used to do contralateral biopsy, we used to consider radiating the opposite testis. Yeah, that's how the contralateral biopsy concept came. Okay, you do a biopsy. If you see a intratubular neoplasia, you then consider radiating the testis. But having said that, we have superb observation techniques with ultrasound scan. The radiating those testes and therefore losing spermatogenesis doesn't seems to make value now. So the intratubular neoplasia finding it doesn't add much to the therapeutic value of the scheme in the current day concept. So as long as the patient is on strict monitoring with ultrasound and self-examination and physician examination, it doesn't make any add value to that. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I have been asked to cover residual masses. So we will touch upon that. So going back to the same case, we'll go to Praveen. Praveen, so this patient had a BEP regime. We have given 4 for him. Now, scenario 1. Okay, I'm going to, there's a lot of scenarios and residual masses. So I'm going to, because we don't have PowerPoint presentations for that, I'm going to give you verbally. So 4 cycles BEP done. He is a yolk sac tumor.
Yes, sir.
Scenario 1. Complete resolution of all tumors, both in mediastinum and in abdomen. What will you do?
Complete resolution in all the sites. No retroperitoneal tumor is there, no chest tumor is there. So then I will do surveillance.
No, nothing.
Yes, sir.
Good. Excellent. Surveillance is the only thing. Very intense surveillance process will be done. Okay. Yes, if I have a tumor of size 2 centimeter in the retroperitoneum.
Yes, sir.
Lung lesions have disappeared.
Yes, sir.
What will I do?
I will check the tumor markers of the patient. Not. If it is not regressed, then I will excise, sir. If it is 2 centimeter.
A lot of points, very good. You said that if the size is 2 centimeters, so what is the size criteria where you say I will ignore? Thickening in the retroperitoneum present.
Sir. Less than
1 centimeter, correct. So less than 1 centimeter tumor, less than 1 centimeter lymph nodes, we tend to observe 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. Okay, some people will call 2.5, some will say 2, low threshold will call 2. Usually 2.5 is what we generally take as a cutoff. So if you have a 2.5 centimeter or less lymph nodes in a non-seminamatous disease with tumor markers completely normalized, we can observe.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
We can observe with no close follow-up, periodic CT scan. These guys will have therapeutic CT radiation. There's nothing you can do about it. And you take the follow-up going on. And imagine the same patient has that tumor in the retroperitoneum and tumor markers elevated. So you said second line. Second line will you do?
Second line chemotherapy with, I'll try with etoposide, cisplatin and vincristine, sir.
Okay, so addition of vincristine, because if you look at it, it's etoposide and platinum will remain the same. You're adding vincristine to the whole thing. Vincristine side effects, Boni?
Cardiotoxicity, sir.
Yeah, 40% of them will have cardiotoxicity. 40%. So imagine this patient is having bleomycin, lung is gone, vincristine, cardiac is gone, and then he comes for RPLND after that. Yeah, it's a tough operation to do. Yes. So before we venture into second line, we take a very concerted view on the matter. All right. So if the patient is very fit, there is elevated tumor markers, lung has resolved completely, we recheck the lung one more time. The reason why we recheck the lung is that first scan, the lung may be normal, but within 4 weeks, you find that the lung has there is reappearance of nodules in the lung. That is, if you have we call it lymph node basin. If the lymph node basin or the metastatic site is beyond the retroperitoneum, operating the retroperitoneum doesn't add value. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Clear? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So what I tend to offer is that, okay, if a patient has super BCOG 0, max 1, BEV 4 given, solitary retroperitoneal mass, no lung, I repeat the scan in 4 weeks time to scan tumor markers. No fresh onset of any fresh lesions elsewhere. I offer them a choice between second line chemotherapy versus an RPLND.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The reason is, if you go down the second line, you are going to have more impact on the overall status of the patient when they come for the RPLND itself. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but if the patient is borderline fit, 40-year-old, fitness is not good, there are lung nodules but not enhancing, meaning that you're worried still the lung nodules are there. You understand?
Yes,
so those are patients, you go down the second line very clearly telling them that RPLND may be very morbid and may not benefit them.
Yes, sir.
Clear?
Yes,
yes, sir. So any role of biopsy in those patients from the set CT lesion
in non-seminamat, you can do. Okay. So before, at least in the way I practice is that before subjecting those guys into any further major surgery, I tend to offer biopsy. So if there is enhancement in the CT, and at this point of time, we'll be doing an FDG18 PET as well. Okay. That is post chemo recurrence. If there is enhancement, if there is FDG 18 uptake, if there is enhancement of the nodule, I will offer them, even if there is a mild doubt, we do a biopsy. But if there is no doubt, then we'll go ahead with an RPLND.
In NSGCT also, sir.
In NSG, yeah, non-seminomatous as well. The problem that we have is that you are going to have anywhere between 30-35% of negative nodal, negative RPLND. But that's a risk that patient and me have to take.
Yes, sir.
Alternate
Yes, sir.
will be that you observe with 3 monthly CT scan, and when it becomes 2.5 to 3.5, you are forced to do the same thing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
Yes.
scenario 3, there are 2 or 3 big nodes in the retroperitoneum, not enhancing in the scans. What will you do?
Sir,
Priyank?
size of the lymph
We'll
nodes.
stick with non-seminomatous, because seminomatous is a separate discussion altogether.
Yes. We will, sir, first look for serum tumor markers, and based on that, if the
Yeah.
tumor markers are not elevated, then we will go for post-chemotherapy RPLND as chances of residual teratoma is high in case of NSGCT, which are chemo-resistant.
Correct. So, what is the incidence of teratoma generally in retroperitoneum? 1 in 3, yeah, roughly I say 1 in 3. So when you are going to operate 100 RPLNDs, at least 30% of them will come as teratoma. That is a risk that you have to take. But teratoma, leave the teratoma alone in the retroperitoneum, they'll tend to grow as well. So we will be better off having an RPLND in those patients. Yeah.
Yes.
So you then have to think, okay, therefore, in which case am I going to go down the second line chemotherapy? That's how you have to think now. So you have post chemotherapy residual mass in the retroperitoneum. In which cases am I going down the? So we have 3 choices. One, I can observe. Other, I can do an RPLND. And third, I can give further chemotherapy. Correct? I have 3 choices right now, right?
Yes,
right.
Sir.
So if the tumor size is less than, once again, my hospital is desperate. Enna Rajit? Sollu. பேஷண்ட் நாளைக்கு காலைல 5 மணிக்கு தான் அட்மிட் ஆகிறாங்க. அவங்க திருப்பி பண்ணிட்டு எனக்கு திருப்பி சொல்ல ஃபோன் பண்ண சொல்ல ப்ளீஸ். யா எஸ் தேங்க்ஸ். Sorry, it's hospital call. One more time. Yes. So in patients less than 2.5 centimeters or even 2 centimeters or less, no lung nodules, nothing beyond the retroperitoneal basin, preferably solitary node, we tend to observe.
Okay.
Clear?
Yes, sir. Yes.
In patients multiple nodes, excellent ECOG status, definitely nothing in the mediastinum and lung. I tend to repeat one more time, at least in 4 weeks gap, just not having a new onset of metastasis elsewhere. Because if you are going to have lungs and then you are going to do retroperitoneum, you are just wasting everybody's time. So you need to be doubly sure that there is no retroperitoneum mediastinum before you go and operate on the no mediastinum or lungs before you operate on the retroperitoneum. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
So in patients more than 2.5, multiple nodes, very good performance status, definitely nothing in the mediastinum or the lungs, you consider an RPLND for that guy. And
yes.
The same retroperitoneum, borderline findings in the lung and the mediastinum, you are not sure, medicons are not sure, radiologist is sitting on the cat on the wall, you go for second line chemotherapy. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay. சொல்லுப்பா. ஒரு 8 மணிக்குலாம் சொல்லணும். Okay. Sorry. So am I clear about the management of post chemo residual mass?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And role of biopsy. Okay.
Yes,
Role
sir. One
of
question, sir.
biopsy is, yes, role of biopsy.
Yeah.
I'll just finish the role of biopsy. Masses between solitary node between 2 and say 3 centimeters, cat on the wall situation, you are not sure about it, then you do biopsy, and especially if you're not planning to operate as well. Okay. But if you're going to operate, you might as well just go and operate.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go on.
Yes, sir. One question.
Somebody wanted to ask a question.
Yes, sir. When we do metastatectomy with the lymph node dissection, RPLND, there is
You
a
mean
single nodule in the lung,
metastatectomy as in?
single nodule in the
Ah.
lung, and you have given chemo, and there is a residual mass and a nodule in the lung. Will you do metastatectomy with the lymph node dissection?
Okay. Personally, I would prefer not to. I have not done one like that. I feel that there is a lot more disease than what you are seeing, and therefore I would not want to do. But whether others are doing or not, I do not know. Personally, I wouldn't do it. I'll go down the line of second line chemotherapy. That's what I would do. This may be very different. If the same patient presents 5 years down the lane with a retroperitoneal node and one solitary lung met, then it's a very completely different take. I'm talking about immediate post-chemotherapy. That is, you've done orchidectomy, chemotherapy, 6 months down the lane, you're seeing post-chemotherapy, you've done a scan, and this is what you're finding. My view is that, no, the patient has a lot more disease, micrometastasis, which is not showing up. Therefore, going down the second line chemo will be the best thing for him. Rather, RPLND is not going to benefit him. That's what I'm trying to tell. It's a morbid surgery to be done. And if you're not going to add value to the patient, then there's no point doing that surgery.
Yes, sir.
Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So time is nearly 5. All of you should be super exhausted. Well done. Should we sign off?
Yes, sir. Sure.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. All the best for your exams.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
नितेश जैन सर आ रहे हैं